Welcome to Health Oddity, the show that strips away the jargon and hype surrounding all things health and fitness to help you live a long, strong and energetic life. Lining up at the bar this week, here's Peter Lant, Paul Bassett and James St. Pierre.
Hello and welcome to the Health Oddity podcast. This is episode 17. Last week we talked about Christmas. It's Christmas Day today, so Merry Christmas. I hope you're having a lovely day with your family. Let me just introduce the other guys who you all know by now. Say hey, James.
Hey, James.
There we go. And Peter, say hello.
How we're doing? We're going to put this out hopefully at 3 o'clock as well. So we're going up against Liz. So we're going to be in the ratings against Liz. So just do us a favour and listen to it. Although you won't know this until afterwards. But anyway, hello.
Such is the power of this podcast, we might end up creating a republic. There we go. So last week, like I said, we talked about Christmas and the kind of survival guide. How do you manage your health over Christmas? What do you need to do? What do you need to worry about? What do you not need to worry about? And this time we wanted to take a quick look at New Year's resolutions. And we just wanted to talk around that subject, give you some insight into, I suppose, from our perspective, what we see in our clients and what they come to us with, what we've done ourselves. And one thing I'd like to find out from Peter and James is, you know, our businesses are based around goals and outcomes and people's aspirations and dreams. And really, a lot of what we do is a manifestation, a kind of physical manifestation of these goals, and kind of explaining I'd like to know the thought processes that Peter and James have about how to realize those goals. Because often we come in with very heady dreams, but we don't really have any structure around them, and that can lead to disappointment or inaction. And you guys know, those of you who've listened to this podcast over the last couple of months will know that we're all about taking action, because without action, just nothing happens. And whilst knowledge is important, without backed up by taking charge of things, you're not really going to see the results that you want. So just an easy, nice and quick topic to discuss in half an hour. How to realize your dreams. Peter.
Hello.
What are your dreams, your hopes and your goals for 2021? What are you telling your clients?
Well, I've always wanted to be able to fly, but I just can't do it. Do you know what I mean? But anyway, that's that. So
well, okay, and over to James.
Yeah, New Year's resolutions, right? Do people still set them? Is my first question, because I don't. And I don't know that I ever have. And I think it's just something that people say. I don't like. Does anyone know the background of it? We probably should have looked this up, but I don't know the background of New Year's resolutions or anything.
It's quite marketed now, really, isn't it? It's a way of kind of selling a magazine. And
it's this whole New Year, New Me, all that stuff. Is that still around? That was a thing.
It was. You know what? When I worked in the sales side of publishing company, that was the big campaigns every year through iTunes, Kindle, Waterstones, all the booksellers. It was always the New Year, and we'd pick out all the self-help books that we'd released over the course of the year, the classics, of course, but also the new ones. And it'd be a big marketing push because it was a way of repackaging books under a new guise and selling them and getting them placed in the market,
So is it just a marketing thing, New Year's resolutions? Is that because, as far as I know, it is, because I don't remember ever setting any. I probably said I would give up smoking like every year for 10 years or whatever before I actually gave up smoking, which wasn't a New Year.
Isn't a normal New Year's resolution to wake up in the morning with a massive headache, so I'm never going to do that again?
Yeah. And also because there's now to do in January, is there?
Well, not this year.
Everyone's like spent all their money and had a good time, and everyone's burnt out and tired already. So...
Well, that's it. I suppose it comes straight after one of the biggest expenses of the year.
Yeah.
People gear up and they spend a lot of money. They have a lot of emotional energy that they spend in Christmas, whether it's, having spent time with family and the expectations, because a lot of my clients at the moment are getting to that point of burnout.
Yeah.
And I've certainly experienced that, where you're like just ticking, waiting for the year to end, to have those 2 weeks or a week where the inbox starts to reduce. There's less expectation and pressure on delivering projects, whatever it is. And then you just collapse for a week and a half. You don't have to worry about anything. I totally understand that. And then kind of in a way, we suddenly jump into action as fitness professionals and say, hey, you spend your money again, spend it with us, and we're gonna change your life, and you're gonna live this perfect potential that you have within you. And it's kind of a bit like, do people trust us now? Do people trust that we're going to be able to deliver that?
I was going to say as well, you mentioned publishing from the publishing angle, but I know, and you will see it again this January, that January, the schedules on TV are full of, diet and exercise programs, aren't they? Like that will definitely happen again in January this year, which will be all about, what's the best diet to do, detoxing, changing your life and all of that. So all of that sort of programming goes in January. That's where they kind of flood the market, if you like, with healthy eating, losing weight, all that sort of thing. We'll see again in January. And I think in terms of where it came from, I just think that the start of any year is I suppose it's a period to reflect, isn't it? And it's a very natural kind of point. You're leaving one year, you're starting a new one, and you kind of maybe reflect on what you've done in the previous year and what you'd like to happen in the next one. And I think that's probably where it comes from. But like Peter, I mean, I haven't set New Year's resolutions, like you say, probably never in reality, but it's the sort of thing that I remember people used to sort of ask, oh, what's your New Year's resolution? Have you set any New Year's resolutions? And you just kind of almost, you used to come up with something just to try and give someone what they wanted to hear or to continue a conversation. But I don't think I've ever really sat down and said, because it's the new year, I'm setting this thing.
I mean, I think when we first...
One of mine is always get my tax return done, right? I always do it in January.
I've got to do that.
It's not like leaving it at the last minute. That's when I do it. I find it easier. I just do it there because I've got more time. Because...
But I remember right when we started this podcast, you two particularly gone through a process of kind of goal setting already, hadn't you? So you were going through a period where you were kind of trying to redefine your business and your value systems, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And so you're kind of in a way doing it quite frequently throughout the year. And I suppose from the point of view of someone who doesn't have a self-development habit, because a lot of people, they have careers, and the career has a trajectory. So sometimes that trajectory is based around the structure of the company. So, say you're in a civil service, there's tiers of employment and seniority, and you work your way through that. Just like when you went to school, you went to primary school, secondary school, A levels, then you did university, and then further education if you wanted to. So it was very structured. Whereas I suppose when you run your own business, you're always constantly trying to find ways of being more efficient and self-improvement, because you're kind of the driver of that business. Working within a business, there's the structure that's imposed upon you, but I don't know if that often leaves much space for your own personal development. And so something like New Year's Eve is a kind of culturally accepted time to start thinking about personal development, because we have the cycle of life, with spring and rebirth and things like that. And it's kind of like everything happens in cycles, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think basically it's fair enough setting resolutions, right? So New Year's resolutions are just basically goals, aren't they? Which we've talked about before. And it's all very well saying, right, I'm going to have this goal, this resolution, but it's like, right, how are you going to get it and by when? Because we just got our New Year's resolution. I'm going to, I don't know, get fitter. Right. Well, that's great, isn't it? I mean, there's nothing concrete there. I'm going to what does it mean getting fitter? When are you going to do it by? You're just going to, is it going to be by next New Year? Because this is the whole thing. Like, people join gyms and go for a couple of weeks, and then they've got a 12-month membership that they're not using, which costs them a load of money and all that. And they're like, oh, this fitness malarkey costs a lot of money, doesn't it? It's like, no.
Well, I just got off a phone call actually about an hour ago with a prospect. And they were in a really bad state in terms of their mental health and where they felt they were. And obviously I told them the price of our program, and they said it's too expensive. But when I talked it through with them, I mean, they didn't sign up and they weren't interested ultimately. But I did say, look, you just told me you've been spending £79 a month for the last 12 months, and you've just cancelled your membership. You took your membership up in January of this year, You spent £79 per month throughout the entirety of coronavirus, and you've only been for 1 month of the year, and you've basically rented equipment and not achieved anything, and you've spent what, 700 quid, whereas I'm saying a fraction of that, and I'm going to get you further. And so, you know, people, it's almost like
a quarter of the time as well.
Quarter of the time, and you know, and obviously they thought about it, and when they saw that perspective, you know, they got thinking maybe they'll mull it over and they'll make some decisions on that. But I think we, on impulse, we go, oh, I must do this, and then people don't really see how it will kind of pan out, do they?
I was talking about this. There's a book. I can't remember the name of the book. It's Kelly McGonigal, the name of the lady, and she's got a podcast, not a podcast, a couple of TED Talks as well, and she's great. And the book's about willpower, and she goes on about how there's you right now, and then there's you, version 2, which is you in the future, 5 years time or whatever. And I honestly, this totally resonated with me. I was like, I feel sorry for me in the future, or when I was younger, for the me in the future, because you've got to deal with all the crap that the original version of you didn't do. You know what I mean? So you're like, I'm going to do this every year. I'm going to do this. I'm going to set these resolutions, and then you don't do it. And the next year, go, right, I'm going to do it. 5 years down the line, you plus 5 years has got to now deal with all of that you didn't do back then.
Right. So yeah.
You know, and in the book, she was saying about people doing, you know, like it's the visualization of stuff. You can visualize yourself saying, right, I want to get fitter. I want to be able to do a 10K or half marathon, couch to 5, whatever it is, right? I want to be able to do that by June. I'm gonna start in the new year, and I'm gonna do that by June. And the very fact that you've said, like your brain will tell you, right, you've set that goal, you've done a great thing, excellent, and it's almost as if you've achieved it already just by setting it. And then you go,
you get a payoff.
Right, so I can visualize that now. Okay, so now I'm going to go and celebrate. I'm going to go and eat a bucket of chicken or something like that because I've done a good thing there.
I saw a really interesting video on Conor McGregor, and I think I mentioned it in a previous podcast because I did think it was a really good. I think it's one of the ones that some YouTuber put together of stock footage of Conor McGregor, but I think he had some background in psychology or whatever. But certainly what he was talking about was not only visualizing the end point, but visualizing every step of the way.
Yes.
And he cut it in with with videos of Conor McGregor practicing certain counter punches, certain movements, and then putting it with the actual finish that he did in the match. So there was videos of him kind of, was it Alvarez where he did it with one punch?
Oh, Jose Aldo.
Yeah. And there's pictures of him in the video of him in his what do they call it? His
locker room.
Yeah, locker room. And they're just practicing that exact movement with someone else. So you know, it's not just about thinking the end point. It's thinking what are the steps that get me there, and then breaking those steps down and visualizing them. And that's, I think, what the traditional view of New Year's resolutions lacks. It concentrates on that end point, but it doesn't really encourage a practice of mapping it out. And really, I suppose that's why our first month of the year, and that's why fitness professionals kind of capitalize on it, is because they can say, well, you have this end goal, this outcome you want to achieve. Let me apply structure to it. And this is the window of opportunity in which you're still enthusiastic. You know, you've gained a few pounds from Christmas. You're tired from last year. Here's a window. Let's capitalize on that enthusiasm and build the momentum that will take you there.
That's exactly, because I was going to mention dry January as well, right? Because that's a thing. And you get people who go, no, I'm going to do dry February instead because it's fewer days in that. And that's already like an excuse. You know what I mean? Like if that's your mindset, right? What's the point?
So soon you're going to have people asking me for a discount in February.
Yeah, exactly. but you know, it's one of the, like you've just said, people have the goal, they can visualize the end result, and it's like, right, what do you need to do now? Bring it into what you need to do today. This week, whatever. That's what I do. I've said this before, and that's what I do with my guys all the time. Every Sunday, what was your biggest win of the week? Why was it a win? How are you going to carry that forwards to keep it as a habit? and what's the one thing you need to do next week. And if that's not ingrained yet, that's going to be the thing. If you've got that now, I don't know, like drinking 2 pints of water a day or whatever, or 2 liters of water, whatever it is, which isn't scientifically backed anyway, but like, it's just a good habit to get into, isn't it? Things like that. Then you can say, right, I've now got that ingrained. What's the one thing I need to do next week? And it can be something totally new, but you're going to be able to handle that. So the dry January thing, I worked this out, right? I did it a couple of years ago and did a video on it. And it's basically, if you live till you're 80 years old, right? And you do dry January, 30 days, that's I think it's 0.1% of your life. I did work it out. And I think, it's 0.1% of your life, right? So if you do that, I don't know, how many years are you going to do that for? People do it, right? They might do it 5 years in a row. That's 0.5. It's not even 1% of your life. You need to do it 10 years in a row for it to be 1%. So what's that's not going to, it's not going to do a lot for you, is it? You need to be consistent. You need to do.
But it doesn't really fit into anything
I'm not
bigger,
saying
does
BT
it?
total forever, but you need to be consistent with these things, these big gestures, right? Kind of might make you feel good for that month, but then you go back to your lifestyle that like it was before, and then you've achieved nothing. You know what I mean?
Don't a lot of New Year's resolutions, they actually are just expressions of restriction.
Yeah.
I am not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to cut sugar out for a month. I'm going to cut alcohol. I'm going to quit smoking. And they're not, and I don't really like goals where we talk about cutting something out, because I don't think they're very fulfilling.
No.
I mean, the idea of restricting yourself is never enticing, is it?
No. I mean, I think I wrote a blog. I'll have to go back a while ago about New Year's resolution, just remembering it now. And what some of the things I think that sort of that kind of are sort of symptomatic, or they are like kind of really what New Year's resolutions are about, is that they're usually set like in a knee-jerk reaction to feeling really naff. Like we said, most people will have overeaten for a couple of weeks. They've drank too much. The clothes are getting tighter. They feel groggy. They feel awful. And it is, like you say, then they set these absolute kind of goals of, I'm not going to drink, or I'm not going to eat sugar, or you say, I'll never do this, or I'll always do this, I'm always going to drink it. And in reality, no one actually lives like that, do they? Do you know what I mean? They're knee-jerk reactions, and then they're set with these big, absolute, massive turnarounds. And they just don't work, because as soon as you don't feel quite as bad as you did on New Year's Day, you lose the motivation to continue. And that's the thing. As soon as the hangover has gone, you forget that you said you'd never drink again, because you actually quite enjoy having a drink every now and then.
It's always the weird kind of puritanical reaction. We end up wrapping a New Year's resolution up with some kind of moral stance, that you're going to wash away your sins by absolution, by restriction, and by like some kind of fast, and it's going to have a spiritual effect. And really, it's never going to give you the outcome you want. It's never, I think there's got to be something else in place. There's got to be some other pillars.
Yeah, this kind of resolution as well must be around resolve, isn't it? It's around, like you say, willpower and resolve, and you make this resolution that you're going to never do this again. Yeah. And one of the things you mentioned earlier, Paul, which is really true, and you Pete as well mentioned it, which is what I try and get my guys to do a lot now, is it's okay to have a goal, something out there. And we call that like an outcome goal. I want to be able to do this, or be here, or feel this, or whatever. But then it's really I really much prefer people to set process goals, which is, these little stepping stones of, like you say, what you're actually going to do. Because if for many people, they don't actually have 100% control over hitting that outcome, 3 months in the distance. But they do have absolute control in that kind of Eckhart Tolle power of now. What am I going to do today? And if it is a habit-based goal of, right, you're going to drink so much water every day. You're going to walk so many steps. Today I'm going to walk this many steps. I'm going to drink this much water today. I'm going to get this much sleep today. I'm going to make sure I exercise. That's far better, I think, than having these big outcome goals, these process goals, I think, because the process goals obviously lead to the outcome, but focusing on the outcome too much and not focusing on the process is where lots of people fall down, don't they?
Absolutely. The thing is, what you've just said about those goals you just said, right? You'll get people who then say like, well, what's the science behind it? Like you get people who try and think of this to the nth degree, don't they? Like, what's the science behind it? Well, where does 10,000 steps a day come from? It's just made up, isn't it? You know what I mean? There's nothing behind it. It's just made up. But it doesn't matter. Drinking water is good for you, right? You don't want to go and drink like 10 liters a day because that's not good for you. But for people who are dehydrated all the time, drinking 2 liters of water a day is going to be a good habit to get into, right? Yeah. People who don't do a lot of exercise, we spoke about NEAT last week, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, right? So basically just doing stuff. Again, 10,000 steps a day. If you're sitting on the sofa most of the day and you drive everywhere, that's going to be a good thing to do. Because we talk about, people have spoken about before as well, people who drive to the gym to run on the treadmill to then drive home again and go and sit on the sofa. And it's like, yeah, well, what you could do is walk to the gym and lift weights instead. And that's going to get you way more. This is that's just to dispel, because we dispel myths on this thing and all that, and don't use all this jargon and all that. So anyone who's got a problem with like 2 liters of water a day, walking 10,000 steps, getting 8 hours sleep, all of that, it's just good habits to get into. It's good habits.
It's funny.
It's not necessarily going to solve everything, but it's just going to make things better. Let's face it.
There was some kind of phrase I heard, and it was, when it comes to healthy food, everyone becomes a scientist, and junk food, everyone just shoves it down their mouth. I know I've just murdered that, but the idea is that people don't think twice about junk food. They'll shove it in their mouth. And then anything healthy, they suddenly become really analytical about it. It's like, well, you sure that's organic? Is it not got heavy metals in it? And blah, blah, blah. And actually, it's just like, just drink more water. Don't worry about whether or not it's spring water. It's been filtered through some kind of diamonds or whatever. Just kind of get on and do it, and don't overthink it. It's easy, I suppose, for people listening to this podcast and think, well, these guys are a bit smug, aren't they? They seem to know everything about health.
Yourself, mate.
Yeah. So if you look back over 2020, what do you have anything that you regret not taking action over, or anything that you feel you failed on? I mean, we don't tend to talk in failures, do we, with our clients? Because sometimes our clients will just go, I failed in this, I failed in that, I failed in this. But we can't ignore the fact that also, as people look forwards, they look back. Mm-hmm. And they look back often at not the things they've achieved, but the things that they've failed at. And I wonder if you guys do that.
Again, like it's beliefs, isn't it? And because we probably are more involved in, personal development and that sort of thing as well. There's the saying, isn't there? It's, there's no failure, there's only feedback. You know what I mean? If you haven't hit something, if you haven't got something right, if something's gone wrong, what do you learn from that process, from not getting what you wanted to get, or from making a mistake? What do you learn from that? And you move forward. So I don't ever look back with regrets at all. I do look back and look for lessons, to then educate and inform my decisions and my life going forward. So
what lessons? There we go.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult year this year, isn't it? I think it's probably been in the sort of the 13 years I've been in business. It's the one year where a lot of stuff seems to feel like it's been out of my control, or out of our own control. But then again, that's a bit of a limiting belief, because there's lots of things. Yeah, there've been parameters that have shifted, like when we've actually been physically told you have to shut the gym, you have to stop doing this, you can't do this, you have to, and all the rest of it. But then again, everything comes down to attitude, doesn't it? And it's the way that you embrace that. Or I see lots of people, as soon as, we both, you and myself, Paul, went into tier 3 this week, didn't we? Or last week, because we're recording a week ago. And the first thing you see a lot on social media is people jumping straight on and moaning about going into tier 3 and blaming, you know, the government or people who are out and maybe not being as careful as they could be or whatever. You know, you blame someone else, but you can only affect what you can only control, can't you? It's not. So I'm rambling, I know, but it's I am rambling.
Like, where's he going with this?
I'm talking and I'm thinking it through as I'm talking.
I know. It doesn't show.
As you can probably tell. But I think the thing is just having that attitude of you know, finding a way, you know.
Yeah.
And the goal doesn't change, but the approach may change. There's that old saying again, isn't there? Don't change your goal, change the approach.
Yeah.
If you've got the goal there and you're not getting there, change the approach, but don't change the goal, you know. And I think I make mistakes all the time. We all do. Do you know what I mean? It's whether it be running business, whether it be managing staff, whether it be stuff to do with family, stuff to do with your own training. We all make mistakes all the time. We're human. Do you know what I mean? But it's not getting bogged down. And I find that is something that a lot of my clients do. And maybe I think a lot of people do in general, is they enjoy, or I don't know, they don't enjoy it, but for some reason they get in the habit of stacking their failures one on top of the other, and then using all of that as evidence as to why they can't succeed in the future or why they can't do this, because they're stacking all these failures up, you know. And I don't do that. I'd much rather focus on stacking the successes up and learning from the failures. So that was a long answer. There you go.
There was something I was going to say earlier. So that was a great question, Paul, because like you say, people can sit there going, oh, you're dead smug and all that. We've all been there. I know us two definitely have. I don't know about James because he's been in the business a long time, but we've not been in the business as long, right? We've not been in fitness as long. So we've been there stacking up failures and all that. I certainly have, right? So it took a mindset change to say, right. And it actually took, I joined a program and all of that sort of stuff to learn how to develop that sort of mindset, okay, of not saying, right, well, there's another thing that went wrong. There's another. If you'd have asked me 10, 15 years ago, what have been your failures yesterday? I could reel them off. Like, honestly, I'd be like, how long have you got? Now, I'm struggling to think of any, to be honest, because exactly like James has said, I don't think of them as failures. What have I learned this year? You know, so I have failed at stuff, like I did the SFL a couple of months ago, and I didn't pass it. But that's fine. I'm just, you know, I've learned a lot from doing it, and I might pass it, I might not, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't change the fact that I'm going to keep training the way I do, and change it, tweak it slightly and all of that. So my goals are still there. It just means I'm not ready to hit them yet. Yeah, it means they've just had to be put a bit further back. It doesn't change what I do day to day. And the other thing, what James has just said there, like I used one of my clients as an example a while ago, but I was talking to her once and she said, oh, and that's another thing I've got to add to my list of failures. And I was like, no. We're not making lists of failures. We're making lists of wins. And that's when people say, I haven't got any wins this week. And I'm like, that's not true. The smallest of wins can be good, can be it. That's it. That's all you need. You know, because then it changes the way you think. And this goes with setting long-term goals over for a New Year's resolution, but then abandoning it by the end of January. And this is a harsh way of putting it, but I don't know of a better way, but about struggling and all that sort of stuff. But the pain of remaining the same has to get bigger, has to be worse than the pain of wanting to change.
Yeah.
Is that the right way around?
Yeah.
And until you get to that point, you're just going to keep going and going and going because to change something massive in your life, in your lifestyle or whatever, is a massive struggle, huge, right? And it is for everybody. But if that struggle is going to be too overwhelming, you're going to be like, right, well, I'm happy where I am now, until being where you are now becomes overwhelming, and then you're happy to do the change, which might be next year, the year after, 10 years time, 15 years time. Or you can just realize that struggle is going to be there anyway. It's a struggle to stay where you are, and it's a struggle to move forwards. So, you know, I'm doing the same as James now. I'm running the end.
I was hoping for a soliloquy.
Something. You just start with a small amount. of like setting new habits, which is going to be a struggle. But once you do that, you start to be able to handle bigger struggles. Struggle might not be the right word, but basically it feels like sometimes things are there to keep knocking you back.
Yeah.
And if you let them, you will get knocked back. Or if you use them as like, right, that was hard to overcome, but I have done that. So bring on the next thing. I'll be interested to see what I can overcome next.
Well, it's interesting to see young kids learn. They don't have any sense of failure, really, certainly when they're very, very young. And they'll just fall over, get up, back. They'll try words, they'll make mistakes. They don't get emotionally phased by failure, because they're finding it as exploration. And a lot of this, what James was saying reminds me of a story I read to my child quite frequently, which is we're all going on a bear hunt. We're all going on a bear hunt, and then they get to a snowstorm, and they can't go over it, they can't go under it, can't go through it, so they've got to go around it. And you sometimes you just have to find an alternative route if the thing means enough. And that puts you in a situation, like you say, if it means enough, then you will take action.
And the other thing, based upon what you just said, I think most people, and I learned this quite a while ago, like you said about kids, I think because kids haven't learned to be embarrassed, well, they don't really know, they don't have the concept of what other people think of them, and most people would be very, very happy to fail in private, week after week after week, and they would learn from it and they'd come back. But most people are more than being scared of failing. They're more scared of looking stupid or embarrassing themselves, or what other people will think of them because they tried this and they failed.
Yeah.
And really that is true for most adults. I think kids, I don't think they've got that yet. They don't, and they haven't picked up that kind of notion of embarrassment and what other people think of them, or caring about what other people think of them.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that were described to me as well, in various things that I've done. One of them was by an Ashaya monk, and he was going on about I've got two things here. He was going on about basically how, as you get when you get older and stuff like that, you're into life and you're looking at it like this. If you draw a dot on a board, right, and you're looking at the dot like that, it's there, right, and you're like in it, and you're like, bloody hell, this is it. But if you step back and look at it, you're like, right, it's just a dot, that, like, there's not much going on there. But if you're looking at it like that, there's loads going on. And something was described to me a while ago as like, if there's a hurricane coming, right, and all the land animals are like running around, like scurrying around, wondering what to do, and they're all busy and all that, and like, we're gonna get out of the way of this thing, right, and they're just in it. And they've got to really work out like how to get through it, but they can't think at the time. They're just scurrying all over the place. And then you'll get the eagle, right? This is all a bit philosophical and probably a bit Indian proverb and all this sort of stuff. But you'll get the eagle who just go like, I'm just going to go up there and stay up there until it all passes, watch it all happen, and then I'll come down and I'll have seen what's happened, seen what everyone else has done. And then I can make my mind up from that and just stay totally calm.
To be an eagle.
Yeah, and you can do that. And I mean, it's all a bit, whenever people talk about things like that, it's all a bit wishy-washy, but it's just a great way to explain it. If you're in it, it's really hard to work out like how to change stuff if you're constantly like on the go. So you need to step back and have a look at it overall, this is a great time of year to do that. Maybe that's why that does happen in New Year, because people are off work and there's not as much going on. So
a lot of our clients are so busy, aren't they? A lot of our clients are busy professionals. They've got families. They've got a lot of responsibility, and it's difficult to take an overview when they've got the tyranny of the urgent. And Christmas does give people a couple of weeks where, like I said at the beginning, the inbox is not quite as busy. There's less pressure on projects being delivered. There's an expectation across society that we can take some time to time for ourselves, and that obviously with that space. I mean, I know in my own experience that when I get a bit more mental space, all of a sudden I start going through my record collection again. I start listening to music. I have this mental space. I start reading more books. I suddenly have these kind of different creative path. Whereas when I'm inundated with things, I'm just I'm ticking things off, and I'm trying to think big, but it's very difficult to suddenly just relax and think of ideas and be creative.
Well, you said it before. You revert when you're tired and everything. You revert to your lowest level of training or whatever you want to call it. You called it something different last time, Paul. I can't remember what you said, but you basically just do the things you know how to do.
Yeah. And
you don't try anything new. You don't because you just can't. You haven't got the capacity to be able to do that. But then when you're actually more relaxed, you've got the capacity to go and learn new stuff.
I suppose it's like how the real art of I suppose when people think about enlightenment and things like these grandiose things, they're actually thinking about how do you live a peaceful life throughout complexity. You know, how do you create peace under pressure? And you see some people do that very well, and I think sport is a good example of that. When you see a boxer in the ring and everything for them is in slow motion and they're calm, whereas if I was in the boxing ring, I'd be I'll be like, I've got glasses on, don't hit me. You know, but you know, great athletes are a great depiction of calm under pressure, and there is a peace, and that's why we idolize some of these people, because they deal with very high levels of pressure and perform. And I suppose life is drawn out. It's not a 100-meter race. It's not something, you know, it's not a football match or whatever. It's something much bigger. And so the kind of scope and the implementation is very different. But I think it's worth thinking about in those terms.
Yeah, I read something earlier from James Clear, who we've mentioned a couple of times on this podcast. And he said something like, if you want to, you know, double your either productivity or effectiveness or one of those type words, then half your commitments. You know, I think so many of us are so overcommitted and overstretched, and we say yes to everything, and we want to be busy, you know, and you know, we're just stretching ourselves spreading ourselves too thin, or whatever the phrase is, you know. So to actually, and this actually comes back to what you were saying, Paul, I think about Christmas. And when you do actually get to take the foot off the gas a bit, everything seems a bit clearer, you know, and you can take some time to actually reflect and to do things that you haven't done for a while that you want to do, and you get a better perspective on things. And again, perspective comes back to what you were saying, Peter, about the, you know, being the bird and getting up high and looking down and getting that, you know, that 10,000 foot or 30,000 foot view of the situation. So I think that's something as well. It's not always about taking on more, is it? And trying to do more and trying to add. We said sometimes people want to take away, you know, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do this. But I think we do have to look at what we do and delegate or abdicate or just leave stuff that we do that's unnecessary, you know, because people nowadays are too busy, and I count myself as one of those. You know, that's something I know.
Yeah,
busy, you know.
I think coronavirus did tell me that I can run my business differently, and I don't have to be ever present at all things. Obviously, I've got to get back on track, but I think once it's going to be a lot of work next year, because we're all trying to make up lost ground to some degree. You know, whether it's financial lost ground or, you know, regain some clients or regain our presence within our communities and things like that. But it does mean that actually, I think what I've learned this year is that I can. There are possibilities for me to step back, not necessarily take my foot off the pedal, but step back and allow the business to breathe on its own, and let my trainers take over more stuff, and I can relax, because I'm sometimes holding so tightly. You know, I'm scared to let go of the wheel. And, you know, coronavirus can be something that would make that a worse trait. You know, with a lack of control, you hold tighter. You know?
It can, but it can go the other way as well, because I think people have, again, generalizing, but you know, from what I've heard and what I've seen people talking about, lots of people have had like time to step back and think about what they actually do, and you know, how much they use the car and all that, when they're like, you know, they've been like, well, we've got nowhere to go, so why bother? And then they go out for more walks, and I've been seeing the trails around here have been busier and what have you. But the thing is, when everything goes back to normal, will that stick? Or does it just go then everyone goes, oh yeah, but all of that's, yeah, but anyway, I haven't got time for all of that now because I'm back busy, you know. And I got made redundant from work in 2013. And before that, for about 5 years before that, I wasn't happy at work. And I was like, what am I going to do different? Because I didn't know any different. I didn't know what to do. But then when I got made redundant, I was like, right, I had time to think. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing now. But I had time to think. And it let me collect my thoughts and organize everything. But before that, I didn't have a bloody clue. Because I was just because I was working 12 hours a day, 5 days a week, and I was knackered. So I couldn't even be bothered to think about
being made redundant could have been a disaster, could have been a failure, could have been a negative. But actually, if you hadn't been made redundant, you wouldn't be doing what you're doing now. We wouldn't be doing this. You wouldn't have the life you got now, So
I remember the day it happened. The day it happened, my father-in-law at the time, my now ex-wife, was meeting him in London. I went to London and we were all there, and he was like, are you okay? How do you feel? And I was like, I feel massively relieved because I've had this pressure taken off that's been sitting on me for the last 5 years. It was brilliant.
So other than everyone giving up their jobs, but the thing is, Chris, everyone pack it
except this guy, he needs to work, but he only works 1 day a year, the lazy kid.
Yeah, I know, he's a lazy.
That's why he looks so cool.
I know. I mean, I've had quite a few clients who got to the point where they have resigned over their workload, and they've actually been very empowered by that, taking charge. It's not an easy thing to do, and it's certainly not something you take lightly. But sometimes we sit in situations hoping that they'll change, and actually, we've got to change them ourselves. We either talk to our line managers and say, this is how I want my job to work, and this is what I want to do, and this is how I'm prepared to make that happen. Or sometimes people make a decision and walk away from the job, and that can be a thing. And that creates the space. And I suppose Christmas and New Year's is a microcosm of that. I became a personal trainer after I spent 5 months looking after my son, and then was made redundant when I got back. And I'd had that time to think and have space and be creative and visualize every part.
While looking after your son, bloody hell! Yeah. What do you do? Does he sleep a lot?
Yeah. He was. It's amazing what sedatives will do to her.
Just can't.
But anyway, so I think we said we'd keep that short, but I think
I think it's about 45 minutes, but it has been. I wonder if it's been more interesting than the Queen's run this year. I don't know.
What do you mean you wouldn't? Of course it has.
Well, we'll get the statistics back the week afterwards, and we'll be.
We'll look at the ratings. We'll let you know.
Anyone's got any questions, we'll put you in touch with our PR manager. As we usually do, before I get the guys to wrap up with their final thoughts, please do like and subscribe not only our YouTube channel, our Facebook group, our Instagram, whichever one you tend to get your social media fix from. Also, please subscribe on, I think we've got Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes, whatever you're using to listen to this podcast. Because if you do subscribe, it does mean that we get a better placement, more people discover us, and you won't be the only one. There'll be other people listening to this podcast. So thank you very much for listening anyway. So Peter, do you mind giving me your last thoughts? Anything you want to leave the guys with?
Not really, because I'll go on for about another 5 minutes. But the thing about YouTube, I've nearly got all the videos loaded up. There are trailers for each one, and I've added a link in each trailer, so you can watch the trailer. And if you want to watch the full episode, the link is directly below the trailer. So you just click that, and you've got the full episode. If you want to watch us and see our beautiful faces.
Yes. So James, yourself.
No, I'm just looking forward to getting back to all my food post Christmas dinner. And seeing what I'm going to have this evening as a little snack.
Right.
But no, it's been a fantastic. I mean, we'll all reflect, I'm sure, on this year. We've started this podcast. I mean, I think I can speak for all of us saying it's been a really good first 16, 17 weeks, and we look forward to doing much more of it in 2021. So thank you.
Great. So yeah, I'll leave you with the fact that you should sing like no one's listening and squat like no one's watching.
Isn't it dance like no one's watching?
Yeah, so, I'm just trying to think. We're talking about people getting self-conscious about.
Yeah,
that was a nice try to get fitness into that. You kind of shoehorned it in there, didn't you? Well done.
I know. I'm always trying to think about like a big ending. Like a book. A book has a start, a middle, and an end.
Yeah.
The job as a narrator is to sum up,
wrap up.
In a concise way.
In a concise way in which people will remember this podcast.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So on that note, say goodbye, Peter.
Goodbye. Thanks for listening. We appreciate you all.
Say goodbye, James.
Goodbye, James. Thank you, everybody. Have a fantastic Christmas.
And goodbye from me. Have a good one.
Yes. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
You've been listening to Health Odyssey with Peter Lant, Paul Bassett, and James St. Pierre. To get your regular fix of hype-free health, you can subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can find out more on today's and other topics at healthodyssey.com or find us on Facebook or Instagram by searching for Health Odyssey.